episode 2 of the Colossal Kaiju Fan Podcast, KaijuLand Boogaloo. Joining me, as always, is my good friend Gothic Serpent.
Hello.
Unfortunately, our dear friend Mothman has chosen no longer to be a part of the actual discussing. He is now completely behind the scenes, so major shout out to him for being awesome. Today, we're going to be discussing Kaiju Land. And, Gothic, why don't you. As we discussed in the previous episode, we kind of went over it, but Gothic, if you'd like to go into more detail about it, go ahead.
KaijuLand is kind of like a game on Facebook that they've decided to kind of do a collaboration with Sunstone Games. They're basically like our starter pack. Like it's a free download of 4 characters and 1 arena. And yeah, that's basically it. It's kind of like a taste of what's to come.
It might
And
be 2 arenas, actually, but I'm unsure of that. Pretty sure you're right, and that's just one, but it might be 2.
yeah.
So yeah, KaijuLand, pretty interesting looking. It's got very cartoony aesthetics to it, and these are meant to come across in the designs of the kaiju themselves, which we will discuss more when we get into them individually, as we will in this episode. Today, we're going to be discussing each of the 4 kaiju. In a bit of detail, we're going to be discussing Komododon, Robokomododon, Gigashark, and Magnarok. Now, before we begin, just want to say that the game, there's a pre-alpha trailer available now. So if you want to go look at that, please feel free to do so. But remember that it's still pre-alpha footage. So what you're seeing is not in any way polished or anywhere near final. So keep that in mind, especially when we discuss all of the characters. They're not finished yet. Anything else you'd like to say, Gothic, real quick before we get into this?
This is kind of like I will say that I think that the cartoony style might turn some people off to it. Because if you look at like the concept art for the other monsters, it's very mostly realistic and detailed. And well, KaijuLand Battles is very like kind of goofy looking, but but the models in game have been modified to have a good balance between realistic and cartoony. So it's not like you'll have Nemesis fighting like Barney the dinosaur.
All right. Well, now let's get into it. All right. So our first kaiju to discuss today is Komododon. He's basically our Godzilla. He's a giant red dinosaur, basically. But he's covered in spikes along his back. He's got fangs. And his origin is that he fell into the water, he froze, then he got woken up by a nuclear explosion that gave him new nuclear powers, like fire breath. Which to me sounds identical to the origin for King Kong. I mean, I don't know about you, Gothic, but that's like a copy-paste right there.
King Kong. Oh well.
I mean, duh. Don't you see?
Yeah, I mean, like remember King Kong? He was just at like the 7-Eleven and the slushy machine exploded and he got coated in it, and then like global warming, we got King Kong. That's exact. Look it up. That's exactly how it happened.
It's a deep poetic film, but anyways, he's a very basic character, and each of the KaijuLand Battles characters are meant to represent one of the different combat styles that there is in CKC. So Komododon represents the very basic melee combat style, which is exactly what it sounds like. It's just kind of getting up in your opponent's face and wailing on them, just punching them and biting them and kicking them and tail whipping them, and whatever other horrible things you can do with your teeth and claws. So he's pretty basic in that regard. His energy just kind of recharges over time. He's pretty decent all around. I don't think he has any specific weaknesses or strengths. He's a very general fighter.
Yeah, he's pretty much like our like taking a cue from Smash Brothers. He's our Mario. He's not like really good in any particular regard, but he's a good like starting character that you can use and say, okay, this is how I play the game. Like so, yeah, he's like the starter character that you can use.
One thing I find particularly interesting about him, to me, what's ironic is the most interesting thing about this melee character is his ranged combat, because he does have it. He has 2 options. One is a beam of pure nuclear fire, and the other is spitting chunks of ice, because I guess that's just what happens.
I think that's really cool because it's really left field. Because if you look at him, like he just looks like your typical like Godzilla knockoff, atomic breath. But instead, he also has like an alternate fire of ice chunks. I think that's actually a really neat idea.
It should also be noted he's one of the few kaiju confirmed to deal frost type damage. There's one other who we will discuss once we get into Fall of Nemesis, which is pretty cool. Seriously, design team, all you people who are progenitors who haven't collaboration yet, think of those ice powers. Thinking about it, it's gonna help you. But one thing I love about his range combat is his new, and it's clear right here on this page. His nuclear fire does quite a bit of damage over time, and his ice doesn't do that much damage, but it does knock opponents around. So he's one attack that does damage but no knockback, and one attack that does knockback but little damage. And I think that's pretty cool. That makes him
Yeah,
more.
that's something you really don't see in a lot of fighting games, like kind of attacks that do damage over time.
I mean, that is a very rare thing to actually see in fighting games, which is something I've noticed. I mean, granted, I'm not a huge fighting game aficionado. I would not I would not claim to be one because I suck at them. I'm gonna say that right now. If it ain't Godzilla Save the Earth, I kind of suck. But from what I have seen, I haven't ever really seen damage over time type moves in a fighting game.
That's Komododon. He's simple, he's basic, and he's nice and chubby and cuddly.
Yeah, he is. I don't know if there's anything else we just want to say about him real quick. Not really. He's a pretty basic looking kaiju. He's also, it should be noted that he's all these KaijuLand monsters are rather small compared to all our future kaiju. They're not small like, small, but they're like slightly shorter.
Yeah, like
enough to be noticeable.
Like Colossal Kaiju combat characters are like they're usually around the range of 100 meters tall. These guys are like
85
meters. They're not small, but they're big. They're not as big as like the other guys. So, but in addition to that, what is interesting is that Simon said that since to make up for kind of their smallness, and their cartoon and how they're kind of cartoonish, they're a lot more acrobatic. Like they're able to do kind of more flips and stuff and jump higher and are generally kind of more quicker.
Which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
So, time to move on to our next kaiju, Robokomododon, who has the most annoying name in the universe because that is a total tongue twister. And it's just a pain. But she's still a very cool kaiju. Obviously, since for every, like, Gamora, we need a Mecha Gamora, right? Like, that's what she's based off of. So, she's, just a basic robot version of Komododon.
Not really. She's actually her design is. I actually really think that she's got like one of the best looking designs because it's a combination of. Because although her origin is basically like okay, they made something to combat Komododon, and anyway, like I really like her design. It kind of gets. It kind of has like it kind of combines all of the aesthetics from all three Mechagodzillas. It's kind of got the first Mechagodzilla's spikes and kind of like patchwork design almost. It's got the kind of the sheen and polish of the second Mechagodzilla, and it's got Kiryu's kind of like long tail and
also the laser in the center of her stomach.
Oh yeah, that's very like second Mechagodzilla too.
It should also be noted if you're looking at her wiki page, because we do have links provided in the description below, that the art that you see on her page is really old, and that's not how she looks. It's better if you look.
Yeah.
If you go to the monster list and you see the little inset for her, that's more accurate to what you're going to be seeing.
Yeah, because like that like the design on her wiki it's like really ancient like art. So
yeah.
She looks basically nothing like that anymore. She's a lot better in my opinion. She's a lot better looking. She looks a lot more original.
She's got dem eyebrows, man. Look at them.
She's a lot more squat and like chunky.
It should also be noted she's the largest of the KaijuLand characters at that.
Yeah,
which I like, honestly. It's just I don't know, something about a giant robot being the biggest thing is just cool to me. Her gameplay, she kind of represents the ranged combat portion of the game. Which makes her a direct opposite from Komododon.
She's just all about spamming beams and
missiles and all that annoying stuff that you hate in fighting games is what she does. But what I do like is that even though she focuses on range combat, she's not incapable of melee combat. Especially, mostly grappling, I think, is probably where she's best in terms of melee. But I don't know, that's kind of interesting. I know for sure if I never find somebody who does it, I'll be the guy who does it myself. I'm going to just be that guy who runs up to you and uses all the ranged missiles up close, just because that is fun and cool.
Like if you want to get like anybody who's listening, if you want to kind of get a visual representation of what her playstyle is going to be, watch the climax of the two Showa Mechagodzilla movies, Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla and Terror of Mechagodzilla. You see like Mechagodzilla with all those finger missiles and beam spamming. That's basically her playstyle. She just
Because reloading is overrated.
yeah, it's like her thing is that she just spams beams until the thing in front of her is dead.
Which, to be honest, in a weird way, this cartoony thing is probably among the most realistic. Aside from the whole ammunition deal, that's basically how the military deals with things. Shoot it until it's dead.
Yes.
So I actually very much like that mentality for her.
Mm-hmm.
Any final thoughts on Robokomododon before we move on to our next?
Well, if I haven't stated it before, I will say that she's probably my favorite of the KaijuLand. Oh, maybe. Well, there's one more that I might like better, but I think she's probably up there as one of my favorites. I just really like her design.
So what we're looking at here is my favorite of the KaijuLand characters, and she is a giant hammerhead shark, and actually has a rather funny / depressing backstory to her.
Yeah, it's kind of like you laugh at it, but then you're like, oh, that's kind of ordinary.
That's kind of cruel. She has a pretty kind of it's like almost as if it were a parody of the tragic backstory. It's less of a tragic backstory, it's a parody of those.
She's like the George Costanza of kaiju. You can laugh at her, but you also feel like sad.
But basically, her backstory: she was just an ordinary hammerhead shark, minding her own business, eating things, and thought that she was basically the ruler of the ocean food chain. Because great white sharks don't exist. That they're just a myth, like North Dakota or the permanent record. That changed because she got caught by a deep sea fishing operation and then brought on the deck of the ship and then just tossed back into the ocean. So although they didn't harm her, she did lose all of her self-confidence and began to actively run away from other, well, not run because she's underwater, but swim away from other humans or sharks.
Poor baby.
So just so happens that in her swimming away, she swam into an area which was reserved for a toxic waste storage, and that basically turned her into a giant monster. Because everyone knows mix of chemicals equals either supervillains or giant monsters, or both. You never know.
Yeah.
That's science. But that's her backstory. Kind of, dramatic and sad, but kind of funny at the same time. She's got a pretty awesome design, actually. I really do like the way they went for it. It's very, for a hammerhead shark, she does have a lot of features from a great white shark. Namely, the coloration's kind of similar, although that can kind of be, it's thrust to the side because a lot of sharks have very similar coloration anyways. Namely, the eyes, and this has been a topic of debate, actually, a bit, her eyes. In her design that's, her 3D model, they're pitch black like a great white's. But an actual hammerhead has pupils and actual regular eyes. Personally, I prefer the soulless black eyes. I think they look kind of cool.
Well, I don't think the contention is that it's not like a hammerhead, but I think it's more the fact that people think it's lazy, which I don't think so, because that's what most sharks have, those blackened doll's eyes, quoting Quint from Jaws. But I think that really gives
10
some
out of
more.
10. Let's see again.
Yeah, gives some more more kind of realism to her.
One thing I really like here, I'm gonna make actually a pretty interesting comparison, is the Cloverfield monster has eyes exactly like that. And one thing about the Cloverfield monster is it's just a baby, and they were going for that kind of mournful look with the eyes. Also, they were also going with a kind of scary look, because the thing about an eye that's all black and has no pupil is that you don't know where it's looking. It could be looking anywhere and you wouldn't know. Yeah. And once you think of it that way, I think it kind of fits Giga Shark a lot more, because her character is a bit like that, honestly, just kind of lost.
Yeah.
So that's one thing. I actually like the eyes a lot for that reason. And now onto her actual gameplay and less about her design. Kind of, basic. She just kind of charges forward and fights. She's not the best at melee combat, and she's not the fastest, or the, best. Well, even though I already said that, she does have one thing that's really cool, which is that she can use her energy to drain health from opponents in melee range. And not only that, but she can just kind of like charge forward because, she's a shark and she's got big teeth. And that usually is a very painful thing for whatever's on the receiving end of that, which is pretty cool. I like that. I
Well,
think
I find really. Oh, sorry.
I think she's our only character so far that can actually regenerate health from her opponents.
Yes, I think she is. That's her. But another thing that really makes her unique, and this is kind of just because I really like animals and I know quite a lot about sharks. But what's cool is that her range attack is like an electric pulse, which you might think that makes no sense. It does because sharks have, I think it's either like in their nose or somewhere in their
It's
head
in there. It's yeah. I know what you're talking about. They have these organs along
that
along their snout.
they're kind of almost like echolocation. They kind of send out small electric pulses, and it lets them know like where the
Food
closest
is.
food is.
Yes.
And so like I think that's really cool. So I don't know if it was intentional. I guessing it was, but like if it wasn't, that's a really good coincidence because that's really cool.
I never thought of it that way. Actually, that's a really good thing to notice. And for all of you scientific people out there, those organs are called the ampullae of Lorenzini. Now, her actual lightning beam looks really cool. It's the only beam we've seen so far, but it's really promising because it looks awesome. I mean, it looks really cartoony also, but I like it. It looks just
Yeah.
really perfect for her. I love it. That said, I think that's all we have to say about Giga Shark, and we can now move on to Magnarok.
Magnarok. He is probably well, in my opinion, like I used to really not like him, but after I saw the 3D model, my opinion of him changed. He's basically like a island deity that was put into a slumber, and then when woken up, he saw that there were tourists on his islands. Angered by this, he decided, "Hey, I'm gonna just like smash up their cities because that's what giant monsters do."
Well, I mean, that's the diplomatic solution, obviously, in this situation.
Yes, like, and then he invaded Poland. But okay, never mind that. Um, uh,
I mean,
he's pretty much a giant. Like his design is very
historically.
much like a giant rock lava monster, but there's just something really cool. There's just something really cool about it because you don't. It's not that you don't typically see them, but I think it's kind of he's kind of got like this tiki style like look to him, like Hawaiian, like I'm a look like I'm a
Now, I'm going to make the reference everybody is going to make, but very clearly he looks a lot like a certain character from a certain PlayStation 2 video game called War of the Monsters, which is named Praetor. No, not really. Agamo, obviously. So just throwing that out there for all of you people who are, of course, familiar with that game, which I'm assuming is most of our audience. But
uh,
in it, there is a tiki god type dude named Agamo, and he looks actually kind of similar to what's his face? I forgot his name. Magnarok. There we go. I'm looking at it. I'm literally looking at the name on my screen. I forgot how to read. I can't brain today. But yeah, they do look kind of similar, but I honestly don't care. At least in the art, once Magnarok's not concept art, 3D model came out, I'm with you there. I didn't like him at first, but the 3D model definitely changed my opinion, as did Simon's behind the scenes video showing all the animations. That was cool.
this is kind of off topic, but every time I hear his name, I think of Hellboy because in Hellboy, like the graphic novel at least, there are tons of references to Ragnarok. So every time I hear Magnarok, I'm like, I think of Hellboy.
From now on, I'm gonna give Magnarok the voice of Ron Perlman because of you, Gothic. I hope you're proud of that because I most certainly am very pleased with this revelation. Insert Ron Perlman quote that I don't know here. So, um, his gameplay is not grappling, control.
Control,
Uh,
control used to be grappling, but now it's
it's a
kind of
bit
like
more general,
it's kind of more of anything that it's not exactly melee, it's not range, it's not charging. It's kind of like
a
unique,
mixture of the three.
not even a mixture. It's just kind of unique, like it's so like control could be something like draining your opponent's health or like restricting their movement somehow. It's not like it's kind of like almost the wild card of combat style.
Yeah,
Yeah,
control is the one that can probably have the most variations within the single combat style
it's probably
because
my favorite combat style.
I'm with you there. It's actually Probably my favorite because it's also to me it feels like the one that requires the most skill because not just you've got all the it's one of those things where it gives you the tools in the character and his abilities. It's up to you to figure out what tools do what and how to use those perfectly so that you can win a match, which I think is pretty cool. I like it when they do that personally in a fighting game. I like getting that satisfaction of learning how to use a character. To make a comparison, I think a really good comparison I think would be Destroya or Space Godzilla in Godzilla Save the Earth. Those are
Yeah.
characters that are, they seem very straightforward, but when you actually try and play as them, they're actually kind of complicated and you have to figure them out. And they're actually a lot of fun to use once you figure them out. And you're nigh unstoppable if you do.
I was actually gonna say Baragon from Save the Earth, because when I first played as him, I was like, oh my god, this guy's awful. But then I discovered that I could do backflips over opponents, and I was like, okay, this guy's my favorite character now.
Oh, I actually never had that problem with Baragon, but also I've used him all of like 2 times. That probably says something. I never use him, but yeah, I guess that's a good comparison to make. In terms of Magnarok's actual combat, he's got a lava stream that he shoots from his mouth, which is pretty decent. It does both damage with physical. It does both physical like impact damage and heat damage, which is kind of cool. I like that. He creates shock waves in like around him, and they don't
I'm
do much
guessing I'm
damage.
yeah, I'm
They're
guessing
like
right there, like the animation is he probably just like stomps his feet or something, because
or
like he
like
doesn't.
I mean, it'd be cool if he did like a whole like anime like whoa like smash the ground type deal. That'd be
Oh,
awesome.
like the Hulk or something.
Yeah, like the Hulk actually.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Magnarok smash. But they don't do much damage, but they like stun and can like break another monster's momentum, which is pretty cool. He obviously he's inclined heavily towards grappling, so that's one thing that he's definitely pretty good
He'll
at.
pick you up, throw you back down, then wade to the village at the center of town. So
Yeah, basically. Um, Melee combat is, fairly good. I mean, it's not very complex, but he's good at it. He can handle himself in there. So I'm predicting a lot of Ragnarok players are going to be spending most of their time in melee combat, especially new ones who aren't really familiar with the fact that
yeah,
he's
he
good at
looks like
grappling.
your brawler type. He looks like the character that you just go in and just wail on things. He looks like he's
Although I would like to add, to be fair, so does Robokomododon. Considering she's made of metal, you would think that her defense is good enough for her to just go in, and yet that is not the case. Which is
yeah.
gonna be great for me when I face somebody who's never like got heard of this game and they pick Robokomodon thinking she's a melee fighter, and I'm gonna be there as like I don't know Giga Shark probably and just be like, oh, you're so screwed. That's gonna be fun. I'm looking forward to whenever that day comes. Unless they find this podcast, in which case
Yeah.
I've just done myself in. But yeah, not sure if we've got anything left to say about Magnarok. Really, he's pretty cool.
Or the Kaiju Land monsters in general. That's all four of them.
Yeah, they're pretty basic. We went over them kind of quickly today because, they're all very simple kaiju. There's not too much to them. Next episodes, we'll probably only be doing 2 kaiju at a time. We will begin the fall of Nemesis in our next episode with the 2 bosses, Nemesis and Ikamasian. Probably we'll be spending much more time on each of them individually than we did today.
Yeah.
Any final thoughts, Gothic, before we end?
No, except that I just I just hope that KaijuLand Battles comes out soon, because I'm really itching to play this game and see how it works out.
All right. Well, this is the Colossal Kaiju Fan Podcast signing off.